So I've been using iPad Pro for about a year now for things like entertainment, note-taking, and browsing internet. But the single largest benefit I found was its ability to draw directly on the screen. I was always intrigued by the idea of drawing digitally, and I remember back in the day trying Wacom tablet first time in my life and being amazed by its ability to draw and the infinite variety of tools that it offered. But unfortunately I was never able to afford to buy one, so up until recently I was primarily drawing in my sketchbook until I got iPad Pro about a year ago, at which point things became a bit more interesting. So drawing on the iPad does take a little bit of time to get used to. Things like pinch zoom, the weird sensation of drawing with a plastic pencil on a glass screen. But once you get used to those things are getting a bit more interesting. So let's look at the three main benefits that iPad can offer for architects. Now, I'll be using Procreate as an example, but the same principles will apply across all drawing apps. So the first benefit when it comes to drawing on the iPad is the ability to iterate, and it boils down to three main features. The first one is the layering system. In Procreate, for example, layering system is very much similar to the way layering works in Photoshop, in that you are able to rename layers, trace over them, and change the opacity of layers one under another. And it all comes with the ability to neatly organize things in order so that they're easy to track and manage. There's also an erase function, which is quite self-evident, but the ability to erase things and ability to have that security that whatever you draw can be fixed is really liberating, because it unleashes the creative power within us to draw confidently. And then we have the infinite variety of tools as well available for our disposal. Now, when drawing on the analog piece of paper, there is of course the ability to gradually build up the depth of the drawing using, for example, the pencil as a starting point, then perhaps overlaying that with a marker, and then finishing off with the coloring of some sort like. But this concept is taken much further in the iPad, because the ability of iterating and kind of layering different types of tools on top of one another is really infinite when it comes to iPad. The second biggest benefit in my opinion is the ability to iterate and do markups. So in professional settings, for example, when we need to update PDFs, normally we'll print out a sheet of paper onto which we're then gonna put our markups. But this process is very time consuming because it requires, first of all, printing stuff, and two, scanning in. So the alternative of using the iPad gives the ability to not only do the markups on top of the PDFs, but it also goes a step beyond that, because you now have this ability to iterate design options directly on top of that. Then we have one of my favorite workflows, which is the tracing ability, and I use iPad a lot for tracing images of interiors or exteriors of the buildings. I also like to use the Google Earth 3D views as well to study the options on the existing buildings, for example, or how extensions or alterations can work on those. My third favorite benefit is the drawing assist inside the iPad. Now, each software will have their own, but specifically for Procreate, I like the drawing assist within it, specifically the perspective tool, which I have to say is the life-changing, because in the past I used to struggle sometimes with perspective lines not going to their respective vanishing points, and that made the drawings look really childish sometimes. And with iPad, that problem is solved forever. There's also a drawing assist for the orthogonal lines, the axonometrics, and also three-point perspective as well. When it comes to drawing assist capability, line smoothing for the brushes is another feature that I quite enjoy, especially when I dive into the industrial sketches or more organic types of sketches, where the kind of fluidity and the smoothness of lines are really important. And then we have the ability to place templates inside the Procreate to save time on the repetitive objects like people, furniture, or trees. For me, iPad doesn't fully replace drawing on paper, because I still enjoy the texture of the paper and I like the rest from the screen that the drawing on the paper gives me. But because of the benefits mentioned, I do increasingly rely on the iPad for my drawing workflows. It's super easy to get into. You don't have to search for your sketchbook or your pencil. It's all in one place. There's infinite amounts of tools as mentioned. iPad can be expensive to purchase, but I think in the long time it sometimes can save the cost, because it can offset the cost of buying the expensive tools and the paper. And lastly, it's a very environmentally friendly option as well, which I'm surprised nobody mentions in other videos, because you don't end up wasting large quantities of paper and tracing paper, especially when you iterate the drawings in the early stages. If you enjoyed this video, you might like this custom playlist I made on how to draw in the iPad. So check that playlist out. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.